Good morning, everyone. It's really wonderful to be with you all this morning. Gary and I have had we really enjoyed our time together with you this weekend, those of you who've been able to make it to the genogram activities. And I'm really delighted to be here right now. And I want to thank you for inviting us to be a part of the wonderful work that's being done at this center. And thank you for that beautiful music. It was just so perfect this morning, so uplifting. So let me begin by asking y'all, is everybody wide awake? Anybody sleeping out there? Because this morning we're going to explore what it means to be spiritually awake. And sad to say, the truth seems to be that you just can't sleep through this awakening. And yes, that is the name of my book. As the Armenian spiritual teacher Gurdjieff tells us, you can't unconsciously become conscious. So what do we need to become conscious of? Well, Julia Cameron, the author of The Artist's Way, among other books, tells us we are spiritual beings with spiritual business to transact on this physical plane. And I love that whole idea that we are spiritual beings and we've got spiritual business. We're here for that on the physical plane. And when we forget that, when we fall asleep to who we really are, we end up sleepwalking through life. We miss it. It's like skimming the surface and never really plumbing the depths. But as the poet Diane Ackerman writes, a shallow life creates a world flat as a shadow. So spoiler alert, we're going to talk a little bit about the shadow today. So we're not here to sleep through it all by skimming. We're here to dive deep, to wake up, to be who we've come here to be, spiritual beings with spiritual business to transact. Do you know that about yourself? Yes, good. You know, in the Buddhist tradition, there's a story told that is comparable to Jesus' story of the prodigal son. And in this parable, the son is a prince who inadvertently strays outside of the palace walls as a very young child. And he gets lost, and he wanders, and he wanders, and he wanders, and years go by. He ends up living his life as a pauper on the street, eventually forgetting his earlier life as a prince. But one day, the king, who was always on the lookout for his beloved son, happens upon him and recognizes him. And the king joyfully rescues the prince, reveals his royal identity to him. However, the young man no longer has any memory of being a prince. He's asleep to his true self. He has trouble imagining that life, let alone living that life. And it takes him time to release all of the beliefs that he's acquired in his life of poverty and to grow into the belief that he really is of royal lineage and then to begin to live his life that way. It's a great story. And as we consider that story, can we see some parallels in our own spiritual journey? I mean, we learn that we are spirit expressing in a human body, right? What's Unity's second principle tell us? We're all unique expressions of the divine. But do we really actually live our lives as if that were true? Because that's what we're here to do, to express our divine nature in its fullness. New Thought author, teacher, founder Ernest Holmes tells us, we are ever-expanding principle of conscious intelligence, forever expanding, never-ending, eternally increasing conscious intelligence. That's what we are. But when you look at yourself in the mirror in the morning, do you say, good morning, ever-expanding conscious intelligence? Wouldn't that be a good way to start our day? In fact, I invite you to turn to the person next to you and say, good morning, ever-expanding conscious intelligence. Good. So we know that we are unique expressions of the divine. However, knowing spiritual principle, far cry from living spiritual principle. Would you agree with that? Yes. So we need to put principle into practice That's what Unity's fifth principle tells us. We need to take action and live the truth that we know if we want to see transformation in our lives and in our world. But what's in the way? What stops us? Well, from the book Zen Judaism, it's a delightful mix of Zen and Jewish wisdom blended together. It says this: to study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to experience the complete dropping away of body and mind. Now that's the Zen part. The Jewish portion reads, the difficult part is keeping body and mind off after you've dropped them. Many people gain back body, mind, and an additional 15 pounds. Now that's written tongue-in-cheek, but really it points out to us this process is ongoing. It's a moment-by-moment experience of returning to the awareness of who we are and becoming conscious of the baggage, the extra 15 pounds that we may have taken on that is getting in the way of us really living our truth. So what keeps me dozing away? Well, to begin with, I'm not even aware that I'm sleeping. You see, I seem to be awake here. I'm conscious of my surroundings. I'm not comatose. And yet, what else is going on here right now, maybe, that I am unaware of? Think of radio waves that may be traveling through our living space all the time, or ultraviolet rays that cannot be seen with the human eye. Dog whistles, where's Ziggy? Ziggy could hear it, but we couldn't. Always sleeping, all right. But the point is, there is much happening that is undetected by our human senses. In fact, research tells us, I often wonder how they do this kind of research, but this is what they say, that there are 400 billion bits of information available to us right now to be accessed. 400 billion bits. However, our brain can only process 2,000 bits in any given second. That's a whole lot of bits that we're not aware of. 400 billion, 2,000. But we're actually hardwired to be this way. Why? Because our brain is a sensory organ designed to interpret and classify our experience on the physical plane for us. I mean, if all 400 billion bits were suddenly available to us, what would that be like? To paraphrase Emily Dickinson, the truth must dazzle gradually, or every person could go blind. So we need some kind of governing dynamic to help us manage this experience of living in the physical realm. And that's all well and good, but the problem for us begins when we forget that we're just experiencing a slice of life solely through the sensory world, but we're thinking that's all there is. You see, our little slice of reality, we're forgetting that that's not total, capital R reality. So to see what this means, are you up for a little scientific experiment this morning? Okay, you don't have to put on a lab coat. You don't even have to leave your seat. To participate, I'll invite you to look down at your foot, and while you watch it, just lightly tap it on the floor. Just lightly tap it. Now, does the visual perception of your foot touching the floor match the sensation of your foot making contact with it? In other words, can you see and feel your foot hitting the floor at the same moment? Everybody? Anybody? Yes. Well, congratulations, you've just done the impossible. You can stop now if you haven't already. You've just done the impossible, and it's not even noon yet. Why? Here's why. Because the speed of light is massively faster than the synaptic conduction times needed to get that message from the foot to the brain. You should see it happen before you feel it happen, and the lag time should be noticeable. There's even an actual Google-worthy name for this phenomenon. It's called delay and antedating hypothesis paradox. And there are several thought-provoking theories about why this is so, but the explanation I find most intriguing and that makes the most sense to me from the little that I do know about brain research is this. Both events happen at different times, but are experienced together. In other words, the brain is editing our experience all the time. But here's the thing, it doesn't tell us that it's doing it. So, There's stuff happening we're unaware of. Our mind edits our experience for us in order to interpret and make sense of the world and neglects to tell us that it's doing so. And it has selective editing, you see. It focuses on what is ours to focus on rather than trying to make sense of all 400 billion bits. So here's the big question. How does it know which 2,000 bits to let in? Well, the editing that goes on depends on an internal filtering system through which I view my world. And these filters arise from, guess what? Beliefs. Limiting beliefs, often, that we've taken on at a young age, sometimes even pre-verbal. And these beliefs lie hidden away just below the surface of our awareness. So we want to become aware of what our filter is letting in. Now, for instance, if I have an unconscious belief that tells me that life is unsafe, that people can't be trusted, that everyone's out to get me, what will my experience be seen through that filter? I'm going to discover all the endless ways that life is indeed unsafe, that people can't be trusted, that people are out to get me. And in fact, I will gather evidence to support that belief, to confirm it for me. And I won't even be aware that I'm doing it or that I have a hidden filter. I'll just know that life's unsafe. People can't be trusted. They're all out to get me. What if I believe that there's something wrong with me, that I'm flawed in some way, that I'm inadequate, I don't measure up? What will I discover then? Will I find evidence that I am ever-expanding conscious intelligence if I'm seeing life through the belief that there's something wrong with me or that I'm flawed in some way? And if I took on a mistaken belief that there's something wrong with me at a young age, I will repress that belief. I'm going to push it out of my awareness because it's too painful to look at directly. Instead, I might decide that it's really about someone else. They're the problem. Something wrong with that guy. I will project what is too painful for me to see within myself onto someone else. Now, do you know what I'm talking about here? Because we all do this. It's part of the human condition. It's a symptom of a newly discovered disease that I just made up called human sleeping disorder. Humanity sleeping disorder, sleep apnea of the soul, if you will. Now, to be clear, this is not about blaming others or beating ourselves up. Metaphysics does us no good if we use it to inflict guilt and shame upon others or wallow in self-judgment and self-condemnation. Do you agree? No, it's about having compassion. Compassion for all of us on the journey, for ourselves, for our family members, for those who disagree with us politically, for our teachers, our friends from childhood, the classroom bully, everyone who's been a part of our path, because we're all walking around with these unconscious patterns of behavior, forgetting the amazingness that we are. Do you see it? Suffering from humanity, sleeping disorder, and guess what? We are so courageous, all of us, to walk through our lives unaware of the magnificent beings that we are. That takes guts, really. So the bottom line is the world mirrors back to us what's really going on in our own psyche, and when we have these unconscious, disowned parts of ourselves that we don't think are acceptable, it's called our shadow. We repress these parts so they're not in our conscious awareness, and then we often project them onto the world, attributing that to be the problem. And with all this muck getting in the way of our awareness, we lose sight of the preciousness of the divine presence that we are. Now, is there hope for us? Yes, the correct response is yes. So let me give you the good news. You ready? Lean in. Our projections can help us to awaken. We might think of them as compassionate alarm clocks, as Byron Katie refers to them. Because when I make a judgment about someone else, or I have some triggering moment from someone else's words or behaviors, it's a pivotal wake-up moment for me, if I choose to use it as that. You know, we can pray, we can meditate, we can read spiritual books, we can go to workshops and retreats and classes to learn about spiritual principles. I love all that stuff. Where the rubber meets the road in our spiritual work, where we really roll up our sleeves and get down into the depths, is in the arena of human relationship, especially a relationship with someone who can push your buttons. Do you know what I mean by this? Do you have someone who does that for you? Our button pushers are often quite conveniently close at hand, and they're so valuable for us because they clearly show us places in need of healing and integration. With great accuracy, they zero right in on it. It's like finding a sore spot. And why does it hurt to get our buttons pushed? It goes to one of those places we don't want to see, a belief we hide from ourselves and then project onto someone else. Now, hear me clearly, I am not suggesting anyone stay in any kind of an abusive relationship. If you are in an abusive situation, you need to get yourself safe. I hope we're all clear on that. And in addition, if you have any deep-seated, unresolved, capital T trauma from your past, I recommend getting additional support and help through that, therapeutic support. What I'm talking about are the irritations in life, the annoyances, the socks on the floor, all that stuff, the paper-cut moments that can be surprisingly ripe with abundant opportunity for spiritual growth, for awakening to a deeper dimension within us, and yet this is the very time we would rather hit the snooze button and nap through it all than see the value of having our buttons pushed. But when we choose to use these events as awakening moments, now the work becomes dealing with the button itself, the inner button. You see the difference? This is where our power lies. This is where transformation can happen in a great way. Did you know that one of the ways that samurai warriors learned to do battle with each other was by hitting pressure points on the body, pushing each other's buttons in a big way? And there's a story told of a samurai who was soundly defeated using this method of combat. And so he left to spend time in the wilderness contemplating his life. For 20 years he was out there. 20 years later, he once again encountered his previous opponent who challenged him to another fight. The samurai agreed, and this time the other fighter was surprised to see, no matter how many times he hit those pressure points, no reaction. And the samurai explained that he had spent his time in contemplation working with the pressure points, changing the sore spots. They were no longer available to be triggered. Now, do you see? That's the work. That's the work, in a sense. Becoming aware of those sore spots, and as they get triggered, being curious about what that is. What's behind this? Discovering what the belief is, and then making the internal shift to integration through compassion. Compassion for ourselves, compassion for others. And what happens then? Those spots lose their ability to send us over the edge, and they actually become the pathway to our own awakening, because we start to really see, well, this is not who I am. Maybe I have a limiting belief that I'm inadequate, and this is pushing that button. It's not the truth of me. The truth is I'm a spiritual being here with spiritual business to transact on this physical plane. At the center of my being, I am ever expanding conscious intelligence. Now, we don't usually do this work too willingly. Nobody wants to look at their stuff, right? I mean, we can hear ourselves saying, this is negative energy. I don't want to mess with this. I didn't come to church today to hear about all this stuff. I'm all about being positive. Absolutely. Affirming the truth. Yes, we are, especially in unity. But while we're busy affirming, it can be very easy to ignore the denial part of the equation. We can affirm our good all we want, but if there's something that is sabotaging our success and we're unaware of it, transformation is not going to happen. I mean, here's the thing. We can pretend that the shadow doesn't exist and ignore it. Does it go away? No, it does not. And it's having an effect right now, whether we know it or not. And here's the thing. If I have a goal that I am affirming, I'm doing all the work to make this come forth. But at the same time, I have a belief that is conflicting. What's going to work out? The goal or the belief? The belief is going to win hands down every time. Some kind of sabotage, self-sabotage is going to come along, and we will not be manifesting what we want in our lives. And we will remain imprisoned in self-imposed limitation. However, here's the good news. Those unconscious self-limiting beliefs, they're actually much more impactful when we're unaware of them. They create much more havoc in our lives when they're simmering away under the surface than when they're brought into the light of day. This is the real beauty of the quantum living process, by the way. You probably come to see that. Because here's the thing. Pain that is not transformed in some way is going to be transmitted. Pain not transformed is pain transmitted. This is a Carl Jung teaching, and also Father Richard Rohr really teaches this. If we have some kind of pain that's buried, we're going to transmit it. Either it'll be internally or externally. There's a Jungian, Freudian saying, pain doesn't decompose when you bury it, you see. Pain not transformed is pain transmitted, and it's often transmitted by slipping out of our mouths when we least expect it at the most inopportune times. Have you noticed this? It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. Eventually, it pops up somewhere out of the blue. See, we are creative beings. It's part of who we are. We're always creating, but we're doing it either consciously or unconsciously. Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, said, "To be ignorant of mind and its laws is to be a child playing with fire." So awakening means becoming aware of when these default patterns of behavior are creating our experience of life and being empowered to change that, to make a new choice, to create something new. This work is empowering, it's enlivening, it's freedom to be who we have come here to be, unencumbered by the thoughts, the beliefs, the attitudes, the filters that have accumulated over the years, becoming aware of when we are sabotaging our success and having the power in the moment to change that. Isn't that cool? Seriously. And we do this work through the power of the heart. The power of the heart. Because when we get to that deeper intelligence of the heart, the deeper dimension within us, the Christ dimension, it overcomes all the rest. That's where the work is. We are limitless, divine potential. We have access to a higher dimension of creativity, every single one of us. From the book of John, words attributed to Jesus, "Is it not written in your law, I said, ye are gods." Ye are gods. And I believe that we are at a juncture in our unfolding as a culture, and the world needs us to be who we've come here to be, fully, right now. And we can purposefully choose to evolve our hearts, our minds. We are so much more than we know. And we are not serving the world if we're playing small. So it's time for us to be truly free, to awaken to being who we've come here to be, to make a difference in our world. Do you know that about yourself? We're all here to do that. Not just to sleepwalk through it all, but to have the freedom, the power, the ability in the present moment to live a heart-centered, compassionate life as conscious, aware expressions of spirit. Let me leave you with words about really living life from one of my favorite poets, the late Mary Oliver, who wrote, "When it's over, I want to say all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was a bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world." So I invite you to remember, you are a spiritual being with spiritual business to transact on this physical plane, to dive deep into the present moment and let the wonder and the joy of discovery that comes from living an awakened life, to discover that as, say it with me, ever expanding conscious intelligence. Here's to the exploration. So let's take a moment right now as we move into a time of meditation and we sink into this awareness that we are spiritual beings with spiritual business to transact. Take that in. Let's take a nice deep breath. And so we open ourselves to this truth as we connect to the deeper dimension within us. And we begin to follow the breath in and out. Imagine breathing right into your heart space. And if you choose, you can put your hand on your heart. And now bring into your awareness someone or something that you feel deep gratitude for. Could be a beloved person in your life. Could be a cherished pet. Could be a warm memory. Whatever it is, or whoever, feel the feeling of gratitude as it warms your heart. Bless you. And now let it expand beyond your heart as you begin to radiate this healing vibration of appreciation. And let it fill your body. Notice every cell being invigorated by this healing vibration. Alive. Now let it expand beyond the body. As we fill this sacred sanctuary with this healing presence. Feel your aliveness. This is the truth of who you are. The presence of gratitude, kindness, peace, compassion, however it shows up for you. Each one of us is here to be the presence in action, to bring peace to our world, to bring compassion to our world, to bring kindness to our world, to be who we have come here to be, unencumbered by unconscious default patterns. And as we liberate ourselves from these, from the past, we become the change that we seek in the world. Every one of us, here to make a difference, here to be the one unto our life. Awake, alive, on fire with spirit. And so we send this healing vibration beyond the walls of this church, sending it forth to bless our world. and for the opportunity to be Spirit in action on this day and every day. We are grateful. And so it is. Amen.
Well, it is the time in our service where we get to share of our financial good with this ministry. I hope you've got that inspirational feeling that's just going to want to allow that energy to flow through us. In just a moment, the ushers are going to invite you to come up row by row to be in that flow of giving and receiving, and you can place your gift in the large basket and then receive an affirmation to bless you this week. And even if it's not your day to share or you give electronically, which many people do now, come and be in that flow anyway. You can simply put your hand over the basket and add your energy to it, or there's little cards, if you prefer, that you can come and place in the basket to remind you that you are giving to this ministry, albeit through the ether waves now rather than through a physical cash or check. So let us take what we offer today into our hands, into our hearts as we join together and bless it. Together, divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, Father, Mother God.
All right, why don't we all stand up together? Let's join hands across the aisle and do our peace song. And let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as a father, family all are we. Let me walk with my family in perfect harmony. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
And as we go into this week seeking to be fully awake to all of life, we go knowing our prayer for protection. We're going to do it as call and response. The light of God surrounds us.
I am the light of God.
The love of God enfolds us.
I am the love of God.
The power of God protects us.
I am the power of God.
The presence of God watches over us.
I am the presence of God.
Together, wherever we are, God is, and all is well.